When working on desktop applications, the two main ways of interacting with your devices will be either via a keyboard or mouse clicks. So in this movie, we're going to showcase how to control mouse. So when the user clicks on something, the program reacts in some way. This case, what we're going to be doing is when the user clicks, there will be kind of like a droplet dropped into the scene, and it disperses out like you would look at ripples in a pond when a droplet falls or a little pebble falls into the pond. So to do that, let me go ahead and create a new stage, and I am going to use the same settings that we've been using. In this case, I'm going to switch my color for my stage to a dark color, in this case black. Then I'm going to create a circle with an outline size of 1 and a stroke of white color. So I'm going to create that circle, and that's going to be the little thing that's going to be almost like the ripple in the pond when you drop a little pebble on it or droplets. And this is going to happen every time I click on the stage. So I'm going to select that shape that I created, and I'm going to turn it into a symbol, and I'm going to call it, in this case, wave. And I'm going to make it movie clip. I'm going to place its registration point in the center so that I don't have to calculate the position of the mouse. I'm just going to take advantage of that registration. So every time I click, the wave will be dispersing from the center out, which is what I want, and not from the upper left-hand corner. And I'm going to export this for ActionScript as I've explained in the past. Creates a new class, and it assigns all of the properties of movie clip onto that class. Then I'll simply click OK and click OK. Now I don't need this on my stage, so I'll remove it, I'll delete it, but I have it on my library and it has been shared for ActionScript. So now let's go to the code. What I want to do now is I want to declare a variable where this is going to be, where that is going to house each wave that I'm going to be adding to the stage. So that will be called variable wave with lowercase, as you notice this time. That's the variable name. And it's going to be of type wave, the second one with capital W, because that's what I used on my linkage when I shared this for ActionScript, meaning the class that I declared for that particular data type. And that is it. For now, that is all that this is going to do. Since I'm dropping several things as I click, I would like to use an array to check how many things I have on the stage and remove as necessary. So I want to declare that as well. I'm going to create a variable called waves, and it's going to be of type array. This is going to be a new array. Now the new array is going to hold every wave that I drop, every little droplet that I put onto the stage is going to be housed inside that array, and then I'll check through a for loop for that array to see if anything is bigger than something, or if the opacity of it has reached a certain value, and then I'll remove it off the stage. Now, I also, since we're going to be doing this, and I'm probably going to use a for loop, then I'm going to be declaring a variable for a counter in this case, and that's variable I of type number, and I'm going to assign a value of 0 to start. Now, let's start working on what the code for the actual interaction is. The first thing is we need to be checking the stage for clicks. So I'm going to say stage dot add event listener, and what I'm going to be adding, the type of listener is a mouse event. So I'm going to be looking for a mouse event, and you'll notice that it gives me mouse event click. You also have mouse event context menu, meaning if you we're interacting with that particular setup. Double click. I am using my down arrow to go through all of these. Middle click, mouse down, middle mouse up, mouse down, mouse move, mouse out. I mean, you have all the interactions that you can do with a mouse under that particular setting. For this case, we're going to use the top one, which is a mouse click. When I click, I want a droplet to be dropped into the pond. So that's what I will be using. No, not double click, simple click. Okay, so I'm going to be using mouse click. And then this mouse click is going to be calling a function called drop. Basically, I am adding a drop onto the stage. And so I am going now to declare that function drop. And this time the event is of type mouse event. As I've been saying from the beginning, they need to match. This mouse event matches that one right there, that declaration. And I'm going to use the squiggly brackets to house my code, and this code is going to say, now that I've declared this, every time I click, I want to drop a wave. So I will say wave equals new wave. You'll notice that this declaration is where I actually add an instance of that movie clip onto the stage. So whenever I this listens for a click. Whenever I click, I add a wave onto the stage. And then I can tell it to go right where my mouse is. So the wave X value equals mouse X. And then wave Y value dot Y equals mouse Y. So now every time I click, I'll be adding, not capital M here, mouse Y. Mind the syntax, always. So every time I click, I'll be adding one of those onto the stage. If I do that now and I simply say add child, wave, I'll be adding a wave each time I click the mouse. Let's test this to see if it works. So I am adding the waves. I am adding the little circles. Now let's make each one of the ones that I add scale 0. So we're gonna say wave dot scale X equals 0. Because when we drop them, they're 0 in the scale and they expand out. They increase in size. That's what we want to do. So we'll say wave scale Y equals the same as scale X. So I can just go ahead and say, grab this line here and paste it here so that they both match, X and Y. Now, at this point, I need to make them increase in size. So I need to add a listener that is going to make them increase as time passes. That is an enter frame listener. So I'll say wave add event listener. And then that is going to be an event of type enter frame. And I am going to call a function called fade drop. Basically, as the drop increases, it fades. It's going to go away. It's going to disappear. So I now need to, also at this point, I want to add it into the array. So I want to make sure that before I add it to the stage, I want to make sure that I add it to the, that I push it into the array. So you'll notice that I said waves, which is the name of the array, push whichever wave I'm creating. So each one of them will be added onto the stage, and then it will be pushed into the array. The reason why I'm adding it to the array once again is so that I can check it afterwards through the array and remove it if it reaches a specific condition, which is what I'm going to define in the function. So let's create the function drop, fade drop. I need to declare it. So I'll say function fade drop, and then this is going to be an event of type event. So it'll be event, lowercase, event of type event, oops, of type, which is a colon, event, there it is. And now I'm going to open up the squiggly brackets and hit return so that I get the second squiggly bracket. And then I'll start typing the code. The code for this, it would be, I'll be looking at the scale value. Since they start at 0, I'm going to increase them to about 150%. And when they reach 150, then they're going to disappear. So let's go ahead and say event.target. Each one of the droplets that I'm adding, each one of the waves that I'm adding onto the stage, its scale X value plus equals, and add a number. I'm going to add a 0.05. That is how much they're growing. Then the scale Y will grow by the size of the scale X. So I'll say, I'll grab this line here and copy it below it. I'll simply change the scale X to scale Y on that one, and then I'll say equals to its scale Y, so that they are basically, that they remain proportional. So now when I do this, if I test this and I click it, the enter frame is going to make my drops, as I drop them, increase in size, as you can see. Okay, so what I want is to at some point make them disappear, and that is the if statement. So before I go ahead and type an if statement, I want to check which each one of them. So for that, I'm going to be using a for loop, as I said before. So I'll be saying for I equals 0. We initialize the counter for the for loop at 0. Then we're going to say, well, I is less than, and we're going to check the length of the waves array. Then semicolon, then I plus plus. So we increase each time that we loop through the for loop. So as once again, the I initializes at a value of 0, semicolon to separate the next statement, which is as long as the I is less than the length of the array waves, meaning I'm checking each and every one of the spots in my array, then keep on increasing the value of I from 0 to 1 to 2 to 3 to however long it takes to get to the wave's length. Okay? And then we're going to say if any of the things that I'm checking, in this case, waves I am checking one at a time. So waves I means anything from 0 to the length of the array. As it goes through the for loop, it changes the value of the counter here. So the first wave would be the first position on the waves array, waves 0. The next one would be waves 1, waves 2, waves 3, and so on and so forth. So that will check through each one of the positions on the array. And it's going to look for if the scale x of this is greater than 1.5, which is 150% its size, then open bracket, hit return to get the squiggly bracket at the closing, remove it from the stage. We're going to check and say, okay, we're going to start removing things. So first things we need to do, let's go back to the mouse follower that we had before to use the code from that. And that is, we're going to remove the listener from that. We're going to remove the child from the stage, and then we're going to splice the array. So I'm going to copy this code really quick so that I can go through it a little faster. And I am going to say waves I, remove the listener, fade drop, yeah, that's what it's called, fade drop. That's what the function is called, so that I'm removing that function from it. I am removing the child that is in that position, waves, from the stage. And then I am splicing the waves array. So I am removing whatever happens to be a location 0, I'm removing 1, meaning I'm removing that movie clip that's there. So when these increase to 150%, they should fade and disappear. Boop, boop. They should, and if I click more than once, I'm getting a lot of little waves that disappear. So that's nice, but it would be nicer if they start fading out as they go. So in order to fade out, maybe I want to add another line here under this function before I do the for loop to start fading them out as they are added. So I'll say event.target.alpha minus equals, and notice that that is the opposite of what I'm doing here. I am adding 0.5. In this case, I am going to be removing 0.05 of the alpha value. So as they grow, they start disappearing, as you can see. And that looks a little bit more natural. So that's just a little detail that I added to each one of the droplets that is being added. So as you can see, the main thing here is that we are using a mouse event, mouse click in this case, to call an action on the stage. And the action is add one of those waves that we have on in the library and affect its properties by scaling and alpha changes to create an actual interaction with the mouse. With the same token, you can use the same principle to check the position of the mouse versus the position of something else when the mouse is down. That is called a hit.test, and I'll show you that in a separate example. A hit test is basically checking if you're clicking or if you're on top of something, if two things are crisscrossing one another, two movie clips are touching each other, or if the mouse is touching a movie clip. And if so, then you can do an action based on that. So that's how you hit what you use when a bullet is hitting an asteroid, for example, on a game, or when you have little things on a menu where you want to click on something. So if you want to say mouse click on an actual object, that basically constitutes your clicking on the object. So instead of adding the action to the stage, you would say, for example, if this was a button that you needed to click, you would say the name of the button, and you add the listener to listen for the click and call the action that you wanted to do. So if it was a button, it would be button.add event listener, mouse event click, and then the name of the action, the function that you're calling to create the action on the program. So this is how you use mouse, how you create mouse interactions in ActionScript.